Once upon a time, when the night sky was a storyteller's canvas and crickets played the soundtrack to village life, there lived a man named Tabo, a respected and prosperous farmer in the hills of Agwick. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man whose yam barns swelled with harvest and whose compound buzzed with the pride of a self-made man. Tabo had one wife, Ayanda, whom he had married out of youthful passion and deep affection. Their bond was strong, their love sincere, but fate played a cruel game with them. 5 long years passed without a child crying in their compound. The village women began to murmur. The elders gave side eyes. Even Tabo's own family began to visit more frequently, their eyes darting from Ayanda's flat belly to her busy hands sweeping the courtyard. Despite Ayanda's quiet prayers and ritual offerings, the gods remained silent. Her womb, once full of hope, remained untouched by life. She bore it with grace, urging Tabo to wait, to trust in time and the mercy of their personal gods, their chi, but patience is a luxury the desperate cannot afford. One fateful evening, under the urging of his family, Tabo took another wife, Tinashi, a younger, radiant woman with the charm of fresh rain and a beauty that turned heads. Ayanda watched with trembling lips and a heart heavy with betrayal as the village drummers sang for her co-wife's bridal procession. Still, she did not protest. She simply stepped aside, wearing a mask of silent endurance. Within 6 months, Tinashi announced her pregnancy. The compound erupted in joy. The villagers chanted her praises, calling her the fruitful vine and mother of nations. On the day her son was born, palm wine flowed like the Rivanko after a heavy rain. The chants did not spare Ayanda. The witch has been replaced, they whispered. 5 years of wasting our brother's time. Even the people Ayanda had once helped with food and firewood now turned their backs, like dogs switching masters. Tinashi's pride grew like wildfire. She often walked through the compound with her infant strapped to her back, making sure her laughter echoed in Ayanda's ears. Some of us are made to build legacies, she would say loudly as Ayanda passed. Her words were arrows, and Ayanda bled in silence. As the years unfolded, Tinashi bore more children, 5 sons in total. The boys were strong and intelligent, the pride of the village. Tabo's face glowed whenever he walked among them, his voice thunderous with laughter. Ayanda became a shadow, reduced to a housemaid in her own home. Since you are good for nothing, Tabo once barked at her, at least be useful in raising those who matter. She scrubbed, cooked, fetched water, and endured. Her fingers bled. Her back ached. Her heart slowly hardened. Even her chi, she began to suspect, had turned away, and so, one evening, when the village was asleep and the moon hung like an eye watching her pain, Ayanda took her wrapper and walked deep into the sacred forest, towards the heart of a feared Dibya, a native doctor who spoke with spirits and made charms from the bones of birds and teeth of wild beasts. Her footsteps that night were not just those of a woman seeking revenge, they were the footsteps of a soul that had finally snapped. The curse began that very night, but no one knew. Not yet, the seasons changed, but Ayanda's sorrow remained constant, like an ache buried too deep for medicine. While the sun still rose over Tabo's compound, its warmth no longer reached her skin. Her world had become one of cold shoulders and harsher whispers. Ayanda was no longer seen as a wife, but as a relic, a walking shame. The vibrant woman who once danced with Tabo under the Udala tree was now a shadow flitting silently from kitchen to courtyard, her eyes always lowered, her back always bent. Tinashi's sons were growing, tall, rowdy, and full of life. Their laughter roared through the compound like a thunder that never brought rain. They chased goats, climbed mango trees, and flung pebbles at the chickens Ayanda fed. Sometimes, they would yank the firewood she gathered and toss it around like toys. And when she scolded them, they would reply with arrogance, their small chests puffed out, "Who are you to tell us anything? Our mother gave us to this house. You are just a helper." Their mother, Tinashi, encouraged the disrespect. She watched Ayanda's humiliation with smug satisfaction. "A barren woman has no voice," she would tell her friends in the evening as they braided each other's hair and cracked groundnuts. Ayanda's pride has finally met its Waterloo. Her voice was sugar-coated poison, and her words spread through the village like wildfire in dry Harmattan. Tabo, once a man who had wrapped Ayanda's feet in cloth after long days of farming, had become a stranger. He barely looked at her. When she brought his food, he either mumbled a dismissal or pushed the bowl away with irritation. He had grown fat with joy, drunk on the wine of his virility, or so he thought. Whenever he returned from the market, it was Tinashe's door he entered first, it was Tinashe's waist he held, and it was her name he called when he laughed in his sleep. Ayanda often stood behind the hut, hidden from view, where the tall grass whispered secrets with the wind. There she would kneel, her fingers digging into the soil as she cried, not loud tears, but the quiet, choking kind that live behind swollen eyes and bitter lips. "Why, Chi-em?" she whispered into the earth. "What sin have I committed? What is my offense that even the birds mock me?" As the years passed, the humiliation calcified into something darker. Not anger. Not hatred. But resolve. Ayanda began to dream again, but this time not of children, or love, or blessings. Her dreams were filled with fire, shadows, and the sound of breaking minds. She dreamed of Tinashe's sons, laughing, then crying, then running into the night with madness in their eyes, and so, Ayanda began to vanish at odd hours. She told no one. In the quiet of dawn or under the cloak of midnight, she would wrap herself in a red cloth and walk the long, winding path beyond the river, to the forbidden grove where the old Dibia lived in a house made of bones, feathers, and secrets. His name was Okonkwo. But people called him Aji Onya Nudo, the one who sees peace and shatters it. "What do you seek?" he asked her the first time, his eyes clouded but knowing. "I want to trade my pain," Ayanda replied, her voice trembling like a leaf in the Harmattan breeze. "For silence. For justice. For madness." He looked at her for a long time, as if weighing the darkness in her heart. "The price is not cheap," he said. "To make a curse that even the gods will not touch, you must be ready to burn what remains of your soul." "I have nothing left," she whispered, and so the ritual began. She brought items over several moons, an owl's feather, a shard of mirror from her wedding night, blood from her own finger. Strands of the boy's hair taken while they slept. Every year, one token. Every year, one son would lose his mind. The spell had been cast. The first went mad during the New Yam festival. He stripped naked in the village square, shouting that fire lived in his ears. The people were horrified. "Spiritual attack," they whispered. Tabo wailed. Tinashe fainted. But Ayanda. She simply sat by the hearth, stirring her soup. Her fall was complete. But now, so was her power. The village of Agwik had known sorrow before, droughts, epidemics, even the madness of a wandering prophet, but never had it seen the slow, calculated unraveling of a single family. When the second of Tinashe's sons began to speak to shadows, mimicking animals and clawing at the compound walls, the villagers looked to the skies for answers. Thunder cracked that night without rain. The air turned heavy, like it was thick with secrets, and the elders began to murmur about curses that do not announce themselves. Ayanda watched from a distance, always in silence, her face carved from stone. Her wrapper was worn but clean, her movements slow but deliberate. And though she still performed her chores, sweeping the compound, drawing water from the stream, there was a new stillness in her. Not weakness, but control. The type that comes when a woman no longer fears what is ahead because she has already lived through her worst days. Tinashe, on the other hand, began to unravel. Her confident walk turned frantic. Her eyes lost their shine. Every time she had a cough or a sneeze from one of her sons, she panicked, clutching her chest and rushing to their side. The once proud mother of sons now slept with her wrapper tied tightly around her chest, her back always pressed against the door, a wooden pestle by her side for protection. She had stopped mocking Ayanda. Completely. It was around this time that rumors began to swell. A market woman claimed she saw Ayanda walking toward the forest before dawn, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. A palm wine tapper swore he heard drums beating from the Dibia's grove on a night when no ceremony was called. Children stopped playing in front of Ayanda's hut. They said she had begun talking to birds. That her shadow moved even when she stood still. Only one person knew the truth, and he lived deep in the forest, in a place where sunlight feared to linger. The Dibia, Aji Onya Nudo, was no ordinary medicine man. Some said he was older than the village itself. He never came into town. He didn't speak unless spoken to. But his charms? His charms were pure terror and precision. For generations, desperate souls had come to him with impossible requests. And if the price was paid, be it blood, bone, or sanity, he always delivered. In the weeks that followed the second boy's madness, Ayanda returned to him with renewed purpose. "They do not yet believe," she whispered, kneeling before his shrine, a calabash of wine between her hands. "They still mock me in secret. I want them to know. I want the whole world to see that I am not dust." The Dibia poured ash around a clay pot and began to chant. His voice sounded like wind being dragged through thorns. "You want to be heard?" he asked. "I want them to weep," Ayanda replied. He dipped a cowrie into the pot and stirred. "Then prepare the next sacrifice. The charm must grow stronger. For every sun, a deeper darkness. This one will not only lose his mind. He will vanish." Ayanda nodded. "Tell me what to bring." The list was horrifying: a rooster's eye, a strand of hair from Tobo's head while he slept, and tears from Tinashe herself, taken during her mourning, not her joy. Ayanda was patient. When the third son fell ill and began to laugh at nothing for 3 days, Ayanda offered to care for him. That night, she crept into Tobo's room, cut a single strand from his hair, and mixed it into the Dibia's concoction. Days later, the boy ran into the forest and never returned. Hunters searched. Drums were beaten. But he was never found. Tobo screamed into the wind, beating his chest. "What have I done to deserve this?" But Ayanda only whispered to herself, "You planted shame. Now you harvest grief." The Dibia warned her. "Each charm binds your soul tighter. When the last sun is gone, the gods will come for balance." "I will pay whatever price," Ayanda whispered. "Let my name be a curse in their mouths. Let my pain be carved into memory." 3 sons were gone. 2 remained, and the wind began to carry whispers of a woman whose womb bore no child, yet birthed a storm no one could silence. The drums of Agwik grew quiet. The village, once filled with laughter and children's songs, now walked on tiptoe around the compound of Tobo the great farmer, the man whose joy had once been his 5 sons. Of those 5, only 2 remained. One had vanished into the forest without a trace. Another was tied to a tree under a shrine, shouting prophecies and gibberish. A third still wandered the village, eyes wild and hair matted, speaking to empty spaces and screaming at passing birds, but the madness did not descend like a storm, it came like fog, slow and creeping. The 4th son had been the most promising. Olisa, named after the sky god, was the pride of Tinashe's womb. Sharp-eyed, clever with words, and strong like his father, he was the son Tobo had once boasted would inherit the mantle of a king, even without a throne. And yet, it began with a dream. One night, Olisa woke up screaming, clawing at his chest and begging for water. He claimed a tall woman with ash in her eyes stood over his bed, holding a calabash that dripped blood. She was laughing, he sobbed. She said, "I have been chosen." At first, Tinashe dismissed it. "He ate too much beans," she told the neighbors. "Children dream foolishness when they are full." But Olisa did not eat the next day, nor the day after. His dreams became waking visions. He smeared chalk on his face and refused to enter the house. He sat under the mango tree, whispering names only he knew. Then came the screams, raw, guttural sounds that shattered the night's silence and sent birds flying from trees. Tabo rushed out with his machete one night, thinking a wild animal had attacked. But it was his own son, howling and beating his head against the clay wall. The villagers watched from a distance. No one dared step close. By morning, Olisa had disappeared. His footprints led to the river, but no one saw him cross. His clothes were found by the bank, folded neatly, as if he had undressed to greet a ghost. It was the fourth. 4 sons gone. One left, Tinashe wailed into the morning light, tearing her wrapper, rolling in the dirt, and calling on her ancestors. Why? Why me? But even the ancestors seemed deaf. Ayanda stood not far, grinding pepper slowly on the flat stone beside the kitchen. Her eyes didn't blink. Her lips didn't move. But in her mind, she repeated the chant the Dibia had taught her, let every son be returned to the wind. Let their name be forgotten in this house. Tabo had aged 10 years in one. His once powerful shoulders sagged, and his yamban remained unopened. His friends stopped visiting. Even the villagers who once mocked Ayanda now crossed themselves when passing her. Children ran when they saw her shadow. Pregnant women turned their faces the other way. They began to say what no one dared before, Ayanda is not just a woman. She is a hand of vengeance. Tabo, desperate and broken, gathered what wealth he had left, kola nuts, goat skins, bundles of cowries, and set out to the neighboring villages. He sought Dibia after Dibia, healer after healer. But none could break the curse. This is not ordinary, they all said. The spirit behind this madness is older than trees and deeper than wells. One Dibia spat and wiped his eyes. You are not fighting a ghost. You are fighting pain that has grown roots. It was only when they reached the shrine of the last powerful seer in the region, an albino prophetess named Mama Mbeku, that they found something deeper. The 5th boy will fall unless the truth is revealed, she said, staring into the fire. There is blood on hands that pretend to be clean. Let the mother of sons speak before her last branch is snapped. Tinashe trembled. She knew what fire Mama Mbeku had seen. That night, Ayanda returned to Aji Onya Nudoe's shrine. She knelt before him, her back straight, her hands bleeding from the final sacrifice. One son remains, she said. Bind his mind with iron. But the Dibia only looked at her with sorrow. You have poured enough darkness. The gods now demand something more. Ayanda nodded. Then I will give them my breath, if they will silence her joy once and for all. And so the charm was sealed, the final madness was coming, but before it struck, a deeper truth, one darker than even Ayanda's curse, was about to rise. The village square was silent that morning. Not because it was early, but because something heavy hung in the air, something ancient and unspoken. A storm had not come, yet the trees bowed. The sun rose, but no one felt its warmth. In Tabo's compound, the 5th son, youngest of the line, barely 15, was foaming at the mouth. His eyes rolled back as he clutched at invisible enemies, babbling words that had no language. The last branch was cracking, and the tree of Tinashe's pride was about to fall. Tinashe had stopped screaming. She sat by her doorstep, rocking back and forth, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her hair uncombed and lips dry. Her husband stood a few paces away, helpless. Tabo, the man once hailed as father of boys, now looked like a scarecrow, emptied, drained, and unsure if the gods he had worshipped had ever truly heard his prayers. It was then that the voice of Mama Mbeku, the albino seer, rang across the square. Bring them to the shrine, she commanded, her voice like thunder wrapped in silk. The truth will speak today, or blood will seal every mouth. And so they came, Tabo, dragging his son with trembling hands, Tinashe, shoulders drooped in defeat, Ayanda, walking with quiet grace but eyes full of storms, and the elders of Agwik, drawn by fear, suspicion, and a thirst for answers. Mama Mbeku's shrine was carved from red stone and guarded by the skulls of long-dead goats. Smoke rose from the embers around her, the scent of bitter leaves filling the air. She stood barefoot, her white eyes rolled toward the heavens as she traced a circle around the gathering with chalk and ashes. "Speak now, Tinashe," she said, not even turning to look at her. "Or the gods will take your last boy before sunset." Tinashe began to cry, at first softly, then with a scream so loud it startled the birds from the trees. "I never meant for it to go this far." She wept, falling to her knees. "I only wanted to protect us." The elders leaned in. Tabo stepped forward. "Protect us from what?" Tinashe's lips trembled. She couldn't look him in the eyes. "From the truth," she whispered. "What truth?" Ayanda asked coldly, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Then came the words that changed everything. "You were never the problem, Ayanda," Tinashe said, eyes brimming with shame. Tabo is impotent." The gasps that followed were louder than thunder. The air seemed to disappear from the shrine. "I knew it after the first year of marriage," Tinashe continued, sobbing. "He couldn't make me conceive. We tried everything, herbs, roots, charms. Nothing worked. But I remembered something, a boy I had slept with at 15. I found him again. His name is Ogaboni. He sells meat in the market." She paused, choking on her own breath. "He's the father of all my sons." A deadly silence fell. Even the wind refused to move. Tabo stared at her as if she had stabbed him. His mouth opened but no words came. The mighty farmer, the proud man of sons, now saw the truth, that the children he worshipped, the boys he paraded through the village, were not his blood but born of lies. Ayanda looked away. Her face held no victory, only a hollow sorrow. Mama Mbeku finally spoke. "And so, the gods allowed this madness. Not from Ayanda's vengeance alone, but because the balance was broken by deceit. For years, one woman carried shame she did not earn, while another wore a crown built on betrayal." Tabo fell to the ground, clutching his chest, crying like a child. His world had shattered, his pride dissolved. The elders stood still, some in anger, some in pity. Ayanda, eyes steady, took a step forward. "You called me barren. You turned my silence into a curse. But the curse was never me. It was the lie you bathed and fed." Tinashe shook violently. "Please," she whispered to Ayanda. "You've taken my sons. Isn't that enough?" But Ayanda did not answer. Mama Mbeku raised her hands. "Only one question remains, will the last boy be spared?" The shrine trembled slightly. The flames flickered wildly, and Ayanda whispered, "Let him live, to carry the shame his mother refused to bear." It was not mercy. It was judgment. The shrine of Mama Mbeku stood in silence long after the confession, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. The villagers, stunned and shaken, trickled away slowly, whispering what they had heard, too afraid to speak it aloud. Tabo had collapsed into himself, kneeling beside the altar, a head bowed like a broken calabash, tears streaking his dusty cheeks. His entire legacy had crumbled before his eyes. 5 sons, none of them his. Tinashe sat with her head in her hands, rocking gently like a child seeking comfort in a world that no longer offered it. Her body trembled not from cold but from the weight of a truth too heavy to carry. Her crown of pride had shattered. She was now just a woman who had built a family on borrowed blood and deception. Worse still, she had mocked another woman for a curse that never belonged to her. But amidst all this sorrow and shame, it was Ayanda who stood like a lone tree after a storm, rooted, still, and strangely calm. She said nothing as Mama Mbeku dismissed them all. She simply turned away and began her long, quiet walk back to the compound. Her movements were slow, but her spine was straight. There was no joy in her gait, no triumph in her eyes, only the kind of peace that comes after fire has consumed everything. That night, the village of Wiçkéd did not sleep. The elders gathered under the iroko tree, lighting their pipes and shaking their heads. "Ayanda is no longer an ordinary woman," one of them said. "She has spoken with the spirits. She has drawn from the well of sorrow that men cannot drink from and lived." The fifth son, now the only one left standing, was found in the early hours, sitting silently on the compound floor, his eyes empty. He did not scream. He did not laugh. He simply stared into nothingness as though he had seen the face of truth and lost the will to speak. He would live, as Ayanda decreed, but his mind would carry the memory of his mother's sin, and that would be punishment enough. As dawn approached, Ayanda rose and wrapped herself in a thick red cloth, the same one she had worn on the first night she visited the dibia. She walked once more into the forest, but this time not to request. She came to pay. The heart of Aji Onyanudo stood quiet. He was waiting, as if he had known she would return. The work is complete, he said. What do you offer for peace? Ayanda bowed her head. My name. My life. My soul, if they will have it. The dibia shook his head. You already gave those when you chose vengeance. No, the gods ask for something different now. They want silence. They want you to disappear, so this village never forgets and never repeats. Ayanda nodded slowly. She understood. Her work was done. Her womb had not given life, but her pain had birthed truth, and sometimes that was the greater miracle. She walked to the sacred pool behind the shrine. The water shimmered faintly in the moonlight, reflecting her weary face. She bent to drink, but her reflection changed. She saw herself as a girl again, laughing beside Tabo, dancing beneath the udala tree. A single tear fell into the water, and then she stepped into the pool. By sunrise, Ayanda was gone. Some say she turned to mist and vanished into the forest. Others believe she was taken by the gods as payment, her spirit bound to the land so no woman in Agwik would ever suffer in silence again. But in the years that followed, children told stories about a quiet woman in red who roamed the forest edge, protecting the broken, whispering to the wind, and carrying the weight of 5 lost sons. And so, the legend lived on. Ayanda, the barren wife who made the fruitful cry. Ayanda, the woman who turned pain into prophecy. Ayanda, the shadow that made truth walk barefoot through fire. Agwik would never forget her, and the gods would never allow them to. When the bird learns to fly without perching, the hunter must learn to shoot without missing. Igbo proverb. If this story touched your heart or gave you chills, leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were Ayanda? Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful African stories filled with emotion, wisdom, and unforgettable twists. Thank you for listening. Until next time, Jay Z Ike.